Would you like that?
No, leave it to that.
Very good.
I like it as it is.
As it is. Very good.
ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसः तनूभिर्व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. May we, O gods, listen with our ears to what is auspicious. May we behold with our ears, with our eyes, what is felicitous. May we, with firm-limbed bodies, spend our God-allotted span of life adoring the celestials. Peace to the mind, peace the life energies, peace to the physical. This is one of the peace chants in the tradition of the Vedas, which are perhaps the oldest scripture of India. Those whose lives come to be portrayed, in a sense, in these hymns, were one of the early settlers in India. And like all early peoples in Greece, in Egypt, in other Mediterranean countries, they were very simple men in a stage of evolution where the rational intellect had not yet developed. They had an intuitive, direct sense of understanding things. And in their life around, they sensed the presence of certain powers behind natural phenomena, behind rains, winds, the activity of the sun and the moon, the seasons. They felt there were presences, there were certain supernormal powers that presided over those functions. And these they call the gods and goddesses. This is true of all the early societies. To them, these gods and goddesses were matters of palpable experience, and they developed means of contact, means of communication through rituals, hymnals, prayers, and the like. In due time, they came to discover that the very same gods, very same deities have something to do with their own psychological functions, with their thinking, with their feelings, with their physical movements. And they gradually came to invest these gods who were originally worshipped as deities presiding over natural functions with psychological character. Thus the deities of the Veda are both supernormal powers presiding over and conducting natural operations of physical nature, and at the same time playing a part in the psychological evolution of man. The sacrifice was the central institution of their religion. They built a stone platform, what they called the Veda, and on that platform they would light fuel, and there would be a flame in which they would pour the choicest food offerings, grains, milk, butter, and so on. And they had the faith, the belief that what they offered with devotion, with love, was bound to reach and was accepted by the higher gods. This was the religion in the popular sense. But it had also an inner aspect, an inner significance. While to the laity, sacrifice was an external ritual consisting of offering of oblations in a sacred fire, to the initiate, those who are seeking something higher in their life, who are initiated by the adepts, by the leaders of society, the sacrifice had another significance. In those days, the leader of society was also a leader of thought, of religion, and he was in fact a kind of a guide to all the members of the society in all walks of life. In those days, fortunately, they did not believe in specialization. Specialization which has led today to such fragmentation of knowledge. They believed that life was whole, that the God was one, the divine was one. It is a mistake to think that the Vedic Aryans, the Vedic mystics, were polytheists, worshipping many gods and trying to cheat each god, as Max Muller would have it, by describing him as this most important god. While he addresses each god, the rishi is said to say that you are the most important god, to flatter his vanity. And the Western scholars coined even a new word called kenotheism to denote this mentality, which in fact is totally wide off the mark. The mystics say the existent is one. The wise ones call him variously. Each deity, each god was a cosmic functionary. The cosmos was conceived as not a finished creation, but a projection, a development from that infinite consciousness. As from a central fire, thousands of sparks fly out, so did the millions of souls come out from that being of infinite reality. And to conduct this universe, there were special emanations of the divine reality, each charged with particular functions, and each one was adored as that functionary. Thus, we spoke of the fire being the first significant god to whom offerings were made. But to the initiate, to the rishis, a rishi, who is a rishi? A rishi is not one who grows a beard and has long hair. He is one who sees beyond. He is called the Krantadarshi, one who sees beyond the range of the physical senses. He is one who has realized the divine consciousness somewhere in his being and is in a position to communicate that spark of realization to those who came to him. And the first God, even in the inner life, as in the outer religion, was indeed fire. The flame, the mystic flame, called in Sanskrit Agni. Agni means one who is incandescent, who is pure, who burns up the sins, who burns up the dross. I should not have used the word sin because the conception of sin is foreign to the ancient Indian thought. Burns up the dross. And when one lights the flame, it immediately symbolizes, it immediately reminds everyone that it is the flame of aspiration. In each being, human being, there is a stage, there is a time when there is a burning desire, a flaming intention, intensity to reach out to the higher consciousness. And the stone platform on which that flame is lit is the heart. In the heart of man, purified, that flame of aspiration is lit. And it always soars above. In it is thrown the choicest offerings of life. That is, all the thoughts, all the movements of will, all emotions, all life energies are consecrated and offered to the gods through this flame. It is only through our aspiration, our prayerful desire to go beyond, that the best that we achieve and is offered to the God reaches through that aspiration. So Agni is called the mouth of the gods, the messenger of the gods, the immortal guest in house and house, in each one. It's called the captain of the march, the priest of the sacrifice. He who knows all that is born, each epithet, each adjective, that is used is not a poetical metaphor, but has a significance. The more one ponders over it, why it is used, one understands the reason for it. And the seeker is first expected to have a purified heart. And there he lights that flame. This imagery, this symbolism, you will find, is there in the early beginnings of all religions. Whether we light a fire or a wick or a candle, it is always symbolic. When I light a candle and place it on the altar, it's always symbolic of my commitment that I have relighted today that flame of upward urgings towards the divine. And as the offerings reach the gods accept, and they are said to grow in man. When the gods are said to grow in man, it means the psychological powers signified by the particular gods, they begin to awake, get articulated, and become manifest. And ultimately, that God is born in man. That power is established in him. I would illustrate. So Agni, the mystic flame, carries the voice of the devotee to the Supreme, reaches his yearning for the higher consciousness, to the gods. And the first god that comes after the flame has done its work is Indra. Indra is the god of the divine mind. The normal little human mind of the intellect can only get certain laboriously pursued knowledge, errorful knowledge, crooked knowledge, knowledge of crooked ways, but the straight knowledge, the knowledge that is luminous, the knowledge that is plenary, the knowledge that is comprehensive, it is only the divine mind that man can achieve. And Indra, he is called the god of the three worlds. He is supreme over the worlds of matter, life and mind. He rules, and he it is who has in his power to build and establish a divine knowledge in man. And he wields the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt is made of diamond, pure white diamond. In this symbolism, diamond represents an immaculate, irresistible strength, weapon of strength. And white represents purity. He wields that weapon in favor of man. Against whom? Against the adversary. The adversary, who is called Vritra, one who suppresses the waters. Waters in the Veda symbolize streams of consciousness. Consciousness is something that always moves, and that is why water, since it is always moving, it is chosen as a symbol of consciousness. And these waters, which belong to man rightfully, they are suppressed, dammed, penned, by Vritra, the titan, the demon, who does not want man to grow in knowledge, to have the full consciousness. And those waters are concealed in the subterranean caves, dark. And these caves represent our own subconscious, inconscient layers of being, where our potential is hidden. And it is so dark. So, the host of Indra, the army, is led by a hound of heaven. It is the intuition. There is an intuitive faculty in man which knows exactly where is the truth, where is the concealed treasure. And she is called Sarama, the hound of intuition. She leaves, and as she leaves, as she nears her destination, the black hosts, they try to bribe, they try to flatter, but she does not yield. And Indra comes with his host, delivers the blow, kills the adversary. And unlike the waters of earth which flow always downward, these waters stream upward. The Vedas always put something unusual in order to draw attention that there is something more there than what seems. So they take care to say that the streams flowing upward and the hosts of Indra, the army of Indra, consists of what are called maruts. Maruts, in the normal naturalistic interpretation of the Western scholars, are called the storm gods. But in truth, in the context of the profound thought of the Vedas, they are life energies which have been raised to the light of the mind. They have been purified of their sense dross and raised up to the level of the mind consciousness and exposed to the light of the luminous intelligence. So it means we have to purify and raise our life energies to the level of the mind, to share the knowledge that the mind has got, enlighten them, inform them with that knowledge, and they can be our helpmates in developing our potential. So it is Indra who conquers the enemy. The enemy not only paints the waters, there are others who conceal the treasures, the jewels, which if man has them, he would be like God. They are stolen. And Indra's function it is to recover these treasures. And these treasures are variously described as the cows, as the homes, as the gems, all expressive. In the Veda, the cow does not simply represent the four-legged animal. The Sanskrit word for that is go. And go means both the physical creature called cow and also a ray of light. Sanskrit language in that early age was not yet a conventional language. It grew out of life. It grew out of sensational response of man to events from nature. And they had only about 25 or 50 roots. Each root came to develop number of significances, shades of meaning, what is called the multi-significance of roots. So that the same word, carefully used, could mean one thing to the generality of people and quite another thing to the initiate. They call it slasha, the pun, what they call pun in English. So, the Vedic mystics arranged their thought in a system of parallelism, always meaning to the external mind the outer ritual. To one who was more curious, more awakened, it had quite a different meaning. So once Indra has done his work, the next god who is prayed to is Varuna. Varuna is the god of vastness, the god of the ocean. Ocean symbolizes in the Veda the infinite. It is an infinite extension over which he presides. He is also the guardian of the law. The law of God, he is the guardian. And he is also the god of purity. Impliedly, one cannot extend one's consciousness unless one purifies oneself. So by the grace of Varuna, one purifies one's stuff, enlarges one's consciousness more and more, till one becomes as wide as the universe, as large as the infinity. And it is only then, when he is pure, when he is wide, not limited in the divisive walls of ignorance and ego and desire, self-centered existence, that the third god appears on the horizon, Mitra, the god of love, the friend of creatures. And he it is who spreads and radiates love. The implication is, man is not fit for divine love, for that unselfish love which holds all creation in its embrace, which heals all the gulfs between grades of existence, form and form, till one has purified oneself, till one has extended one's consciousness. There comes Mitra. And there is a gradation for the other gods. These are the major gods. And the highest god is the sun. The sun of truth is golden. Truth is always symbolized by gold. And the sun of truth, he is described as always shining in the highest meridian of the skies, whom the wise behold always. Certainly, they do not mean the physical sun in our terrestrial skies, because he does set in the evening. He does not shine always. And even a foolish man can look at the sun. It doesn't require a wise man to look at the sun. It is a spiritual sun, the sun of truth, of whom our terrestrial sun, the physical sun, is only a physical symbol. The Veda speaks of 7 worlds, 7 principles of existence. Each world being organized and built on a particular principle of existence. And each world has its own sun. They speak of the highest world as the world of existence, the second world as the world of consciousness, the third world as the world of bliss, delight, ananda. Then they speak of the world of vastness, the world of light, Mahas. Thereafter comes the world of mind, the world of life, and the world of matter. So from our end, it is matter, life, vitality, mind, and what is popularly called heaven in religions is situated in this mental world, not beyond. And thereafter is the wide world of truth, of light. Truth and light are synonymous because the form of truth is light. Bharupaha satya sankalpaha. If truth has a form, it is light. And in this scheme, they speak of an interpenetration. No world is separate from others. And the scheme of the seven worlds in the cosmos is repeated in each human individual in an individual scheme. The development of relation, of synthesis between the external world and the inner world is the preoccupation of the seeker of truth, the seeker of God, who in the Vedic age seeks to harmonize God, nature and man in his consciousness. And the object of life is not salvation into some nirvana, into some bliss beyond, into some paradise elsewhere, but here on earth. The mystics speak, being here, we shall realize. We shall have the cosmic enjoyment living here on earth. And it is interesting to modern psychology to know that their conception of full realization, an integral perfection, lay in what they call the formation, the building, the shaping, right, of four bowls out of one. The hymns describe how the architect of the universal architect, Vestri, gives man one bowl, and man in his spiritual endeavor, he summons the aid of the artisans of immortality, a special class of gods who originally were men, human beings, who have risen to that high state by virtue of their ascesis, of their spiritual disciplines, enlightenment, illumination. They are the artisans of immortality, Vibhus, and they help man to shape four bowls out of one bowl which he has originally. In other words, out of that inchoate mass that he had, he separates the various strands of his being, the mixed up strands of his consciousness, individualizes each part to its utmost, optimum, and develops the bowls of knowledge, of power or strength, of harmony, organization, work, and activity, service. That is the beginning of the fourfold order. Each individual, in the vision of the mystic, has four elements in him. the element of knowledge, the element of strength, the element of production, harmonization, relationship, the element of work. And all these four have to be developed, harmonized, and integrated in the being of man. And what is true of man, the individual, is also true of the society of man. After all, the individual and the society are not two warring entities as many of us think them to be. Both are self-projections, emanations of the divine manifesting reality, one in the universal scheme and one in the individual scheme. This is the positive message of the hymns of the Vedic mystics. And the hymns that have come down to us constituting the Veda, they represent only a fragment of the hymnal of a people who lived in prehistoric times. It's only some fragments that have been collected and preserved, describing the life and the aspirations, the mores and the ideals of a people who had ceased to be before history came to be written. We have hardly 10,000 verses, but they lay the foundations of the whole Indian civilization. And in fact, there are the clues for the development of world spirituality, world occultism, and world philosophies. There is no major philosophical or spiritual conception anywhere which has not been adumbrated in some way or other in the utterance of the Vedas. And that is because the hymns of the Veda, the mantras as they are called, the potent word as it is called, was not a poetical composition. It was not something that was composed or concocted by the mind. The rishi, the seer, when he is engaged in his self-exploration, in the exploration of his consciousness, wrapped, self-wrapped, in him sails occasionally some truth from the bosom of the infinite around. It gets into him, and he just receives that in his heart and broods over it in his consciousness, like the hen over the eggs. He lets it brood. They describe how these mantras are carved out from the heart. They are not written by the mind. And after they have been sufficiently brooded over, they, through the center of expression, they find the right word. The mind of the rishi does not interfere. It does not interpret. And he sees the word only when the word is uttered. And that is why the mantra is a certain concrete result of the inner ascesis, concentration of spiritual energies of the rishi, the mystic, which has been for him a means of ascent to the divine consciousness, and which can also be a means for a similar ascent for anyone who tunes himself to the message of that potent word. That is why the mantra is still revered in the Indian tradition as the word that saves when you dwell upon it. Manana prayate iti mantra. That is, by dwelling upon it, by contemplating upon it, you are saved. You are delivered. And each mantra has this supernatural origin. When, in a popular sense, they speak that the Vedas are not man-made, but given by God, they make a lot of fun, scholars, missing the true import. All that is meant was that it is not created by man. It has been received by the human consciousness from a level of being which is higher than the mind. Recorded and preserved for posterity. In the Tantras, which is a parallel line of development, a mantra is always called the sound body of a god. Each deity, each god has a mantra. That is, he lives in that sound. And mind you, the Vedic gods have many bodies. The Tantra speaks, for instance, of triangles, circles, combinations, yantras, mandalas. They are called the diagrammatic bodies, the linear representations, linear bodies of gods. The mantras are sound bodies of gods, and there is the ideative body of God. You have great ideas. The deity first manifests to the human consciousness in the form of an idea. That idea is not a reasoned thing. It just comes down in the form of an idea, and thereafter we reason it out. Try to justify, try to disprove, or whatever it is. So the Vedas conceive of all life as one. They don't make an impassable gulf between man and gods. They speak with love, with tenderness of God. They speak of the grace. They emphasize the necessity of human effort. They say an Arya. The Aryan is one who puts in effort. He doesn't sit idle waiting for things to happen. He is one who exerts. But to point out, ultimately, it is only he who is chosen by the self, to whom the self bears its body. The doctrine of grace is there in the Vedas. It says ultimately it is the will of God to storm the kingdom of heaven by violence is an empty phrase. However much one may exert oneself, one has to patiently wait at the gates, in trust, wait for the hour of God. And that is called the Muhurta. That auspicious hour when the divine bounty comes in abundance, and whoever is open, whoever is receptive, receives the bounty. So ultimately, the message of the Vedas is that all depends on the grace of God. But the grace flows on the sinner and the virtuous alike. It does not make a distinction according to man-made moralities. But the fact that grace flows where a state of grace has been already built up is another theme, which is not our subject today. I would like to invite questions.
After you've had a drink of water, which I usurped a little while ago. questions, and would you like to field them? So, fire away. You know, there was one thing I was going to ask.
Could you please take?
Oh,
Yes.
yes. One thing I was going to ask. In your list of subjects, you had mentioned speaking on the Tantras. And I said we had sort of hesitated
Yes.
to mention that because the Tantras have some connotations which are sort of offbeat here in the West. And so I thought maybe you might like to say a few words on that, on the subject of what they really mean to the, let's say, the occultists.
Yes. Yes. I should perhaps mention that in quite a number there are quite a number of theosophical centers in this country. I was asked to speak on tantras, philosophy of the Kundalini Yoga and so on, particularly in view of the gross misunderstanding that not only prevails but is promoted by certain interests in this country, and I welcomed the occasions, to mention exactly what the Tantra is, why it has come to acquire that order that it has at present, and to point out that the Tantra in India has a prestige, has an antiquity as old as the Vedas, because the Vedas, of which I spoke to you just now, it had a ritual aspect for the external people, generality, an inner significance which was carefully guarded from the public so that they may not make the wrong use of that knowledge to harm others. And third, there was a body of practice, not just philosophy, but a practice to commune with the gods, to communicate with them, to develop one's consciousness at various levels and tune in with their respective gods. Now, at the end of the curve of that Vedic civilization, the tradition passed. And after about 1,000 years, there came a moment of revival, where people remembered the old traditions mixed up, and they sought to revive that old tradition in its purity. And this movement for revival took three forms, flowed into three streams. One, which wanted to resuscitate the tradition of ritualism, sacrifice, the formula to be used, the articles to be offered, and so on. What one may call what was in the custody of the priests. That came to be known as the Brahmanas, which are largely prose treatises, examining, explaining, and researching into the ritualistic thought. There was another stream which sought to recover the knowledge portion, the knowledge content of the Vedas, and that is what we call the Upanishads. And the third stream, which continued, revived, and enlarged upon the older tradition of its esoteric practices, is the Yoga and the Tantra. The Tantra is that which spreads. The derivative meaning of the word is what spreads. As you practice, it becomes more and more As you learn, your knowledge grows more and more. And that gives a knowledge of the constitution of man, of the world, their correspondence, the several points of consciousness in each person, which are related to corresponding planes of consciousness and the world situated on those planes. The way to awaken these centers, activize them, relate them to those worlds, bring about a unity between the microcosm and the macrocosm, and develop the human potential to its optimum. Unlike the other traditions which rejected nature and emphasized only on the self, the soul, the Tantra insists upon treating the whole world as the rightful field for the manifestation of the glory of God. It takes it that nature is a power of God. Nature is not something alien to God, something foreign, but it is the self-power of God. There is a lower nature, there is a higher nature. There is a lower self, there is a higher self. And the art of Tantra is to learn to elevate the lower self, the lower nature, into its higher turn. Tantra is not a science to develop and give free rein to the animal nature of man. It is to divinize man. The way Tantra speaks of three categories of people. One it calls the animal man, who is still a creature of his desire, tossed by the senses. He has no right to enter into the mysteries of the Tattva. He should be content with what is called the substitutional worship. There is the hero man who has conquered desire. He takes the world by storm. He takes nature by storm. And all his activities on all levels are offered to the divine. Third is the godly man who has risen to the sattvic light and the balance and harmony, and whose way is purely inner, not outer. That's the truth of the Tattva. And the most crucial point is in Kundalini Yoga, when that coiled up potent power in man at the base of the spine is woken up by appropriate practices into which we don't need to enter now, there is a great enhancement of power of the physical. Greed for food, greed for sex, all these enhance themselves. And the tracts that are being sold here in this country, they emphasize those points. And the youngsters in this country think that it gives free license. But the Tantra forbids sex. When this enhancement of the sex desire is affected, when the energy is released, man goes insane, imbalanced, sick, if he disregards that precaution. Sex is eschewed at this stage, but that is not a point that is mentioned here in many of the books that are current and popular. If you have any questions. Yeah.
I have one. I very much enjoyed your development of the worlds of the cosmos, and then you said at the end, the scheme of the 7 worlds of the cosmos is repeated in each human scheme. Did you mean in each human person's life, or did you mean in each age as man evolves at the yugas?
All these 7 principles are there as principles in man always.
The human?
Yes,
One
in human being.
person.
In human being. Only as the person evolves, more and more principles are articulated, expressed, organized. We are so far, we have developed only 3 principles in us. The principle of matter, the principle of life, the principle of mind. And in some, indistinct manner, the soul. But the other principles, the principle of absolute truth, the principle of unadulterated bliss, the principle of sheer consciousness, and the principle of immortal existence, they are still to be developed. We are actually in the kindergarten stage of our possible evolution.
And that answers the other question I wanted to ask. I was going to ask you, do we ever come to the end of symbology? But we'd have to be out of the area of mind development then to be able to see without having symbols represented.
What is a symbol? A symbol is a representation of a reality which is not patent to the eye. The physical order of existence is not everything. There are various other orders of existence. And when those realities are represented, projected in our context, they are represented by certain tokens, by certain symbols. So till we arrive at a stage when all these worlds, the entire cosmos, can be represented in some way, directly, we need to have this indirect way of representation. We have yet to develop that cosmic language which can speak of other states of consciousness which are in the domain of mysteries to us.
Do I see any more hands? If not, thank you, Pandit. And now we'll be closing our... Pardon? Awesome.
Yes.
I'm going to say we're going to close our meeting with the Gayatri by Santi.
What I was asking him was whether he would recite the Gayatri himself. But
would you like some accompaniment? Ruth says. Excuse me, Ruth is.